it wasn't specific to beverage, but what has really taken center stage in Minnesota is the beverage category. And so you have some, instead of 129 dispensaries or whatever, you have 4,000 doors that you can all of a sudden sell into.
Amazing.
And you're having consumers see and try and enjoy cannabis beverages.
Hey guys, this is Sid Patel, CEO of Beverage Trade Network and Cannabis Drinks Expo. We are here live at the Cannabis Drinks Expo, 3rd edition in Chicago. I'm here with Benjamin Larson, CEO and founder, I believe, Ben,
yes, sir,
of Vertosa, one of the leading companies helping brands, formulate their products, come up with their products, so especially if you're an entrepreneur looking to make a cannabis beverage, that company is the main company that can help you out. What I really wanted to chat with Ben is pick his brain on this whole D9 and hemp-derived beverages, right? How that is influencing the category.
Sure.
And I think there's a lot of motivation there as well. That may be the pivot, that may be the way to move forward, right, Ben?
Yeah.
So just give us your take, because you've seen it all. You've seen the brands, you've seen the formulations, you've seen what kind of product inquiries are coming in.
Yeah.
So what's your summary on how we can move forward and this how is it influencing the category?
Yeah, it's been quite the evolution, to be honest. At first, I was actually quite a big skeptic. I've been in the industry for about 8 years now. Have advocated a lot for licensed businesses, equity licensing, and all that kind of stuff. And then what emerged were these hemp-derived beverages. And first, it came in the form of Delta-9 beverages online that you could order direct to your house. And so, truthfully, when I first heard about it, I'm like, this needs to be stopped. This is a threat. You're competing directly with all of the legal space. And that has shifted. And I think the big catalyst for that shift was Minnesota legalizing low-dose hemp products.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you go to Minnesota, all of a sudden, it's like the future. It's like they legalized low-dose Delta-9 products. It wasn't specific to beverage, but what has really taken center stage in Minnesota is the beverage category. And so you have some, instead of 129 dispensaries or whatever, you have 4,000 doors that you can all of a sudden sell into.
Amazing.
And you're having consumers see and try and enjoy cannabis beverages right next to their alcoholic counterparts in places like restaurants and bars. And that is just an incredible opportunity. And I think what happened since Minnesota is just that we see this proliferation of people kind of working this avenue, trying to make low-dose products more relevant in the mainstream marketplace. And we're seeing this bifurcation where in the dispensary market, especially in places like California, where you have high-dose products, legacy consumers, you see 100 milligram beverages, really the high dose medical market being delivered in dispensaries. But you see this mass market push with low dose, 5 milligrams, 10 milligrams maybe, online in different markets. And it's just it's constantly evolving right now. Just last week, New York, basically the OCM tried to shut it all down. We'll see how it progresses. I know there's some brands that are not so happy about it. But I do think this trend of Minnesota is going to start to progress from state to state.
I think pretty much we chatted as well on, for mature markets like California, it is high dose and dispensary route. But the kind of curious, we were all excited, they were excited, but then the disconnect started happening because of the bottlenecks of dispensary and they not putting the products on the shelf. So this is a great way to bring back the kind of curious, the first ones, the ones who are curious to try. Are you seeing this going forward, or is Minnesota still in a test run?
I think Minnesota's here to stay.
Okay.
And so what we are seeing is new states considering doing similar laws as Minnesota.
And which were these? Do you know any states which come to mind which are trying this?
It's a little different market by market.
Okay.
Interestingly enough, I think it's more of a red state thing, like, red states that have historically had hemp supply chains, because if you think about it, it's an economic lifeline for these hemp CBD companies, all of a sudden be able to have a new revenue stream that frankly has a strong product market fit. And so places like Texas, Florida have created legal hemp markets, but there are legislative pushes, and I wouldn't say that there's any front runners yet, but I know the conversations are starting to happen, especially on the East Coast, about like what happens if we do something similar to Minnesota. And in the cannabis industry, we know that that's how things work. You plant the seed, you keep pushing, you're persistent, and eventually through grassroots efforts, we can see that change happen.
Let's go back to the CBD beverages, right?
Sure.
You've pretty much, you've supplied, you've helped a lot of brands, and I'm sure they are facing challenges from dispensaries, which also means maybe you are facing challenges with your payments and reorders and things of that nature.
That's real.
How are you navigating your own company right now?
Yeah, Wendy Berger gave a great talk earlier today, and she was talking about the chaos and running a responsible business, and that's what we've really focused on the last year. We are a venture-backed company. The first 4 years of our business, it was about growth, 3x year over year, and that's what the board wanted to see. The last year has been about dialing all that back, getting the business fundamentally sound, and making sure that, frankly, we're producing a profit and that we're here to stay. And it's super important. As an ingredient company, like, people rely on us. And so we can't be gone tomorrow. We
True.
I can't afford like to do that to our customers, right? And so that's how we're thinking about the business. But the interesting thing is that this hemp market has opened up for many of the businesses. Is it's a cost savings to be able to do this, not just from a tax perspective. A lot of people will say, well, of course you're going to do great. You're not getting taxed like these regular markets. But because they're beverage companies, there's a lot of cost in producing the product itself. And beverage is all about scale. Like Pepsi and Coca-Cola and Budweiser, they run on razor thin margins, right? And we don't have the ability to do that in the cannabis beverage community. Now that people are leveraging this access point, they're able to like centralize manufacturing, achieve some scale, and deliver products at a more reasonable price point, thus creating even greater accessibility to the canna curious, right? And so, some people might argue it's like, well, yeah, they're being opportunistic or they're bending the rules, but what I've come around to believe is like, at the end of the day, everything we do is somewhat illegal in the eyes of the federal government. And so at the end of the day, what we're doing is creating access for new consumers and opening them up to beverage. And I think that's just an incredible opportunity.
Are you seeing like, any examples or any movement in big companies like Pepsi, Coke, or even Kraft, or any CPG brand getting into this, because it's a game of shelf space now?
Yeah. Not yet.
But they can legally?
They can't commingle the manufacturing or the supply chains, and that's what holds most of them at bay. Like, there's no benefit for any of these companies that have a huge manufacturing plant. There's no benefit for them really.
So can Coca-Cola have a separate floor and make this and put it in the same truck that Coke is going?
No.
All right.
Unless it's within one state and they have a distributor license, and like it's a heavy lift. And so unless they want to get into the brand licensing game and just like plant a seed, like the beer companies have started to do. Okay. Right? You have PBR, Lagunitas,
so
Boston
they can
Beer.
With the same delivery and same or completely different infrastructure.
Different.
Understood.
Yeah. Like Boston Beer has Paul Weaver, who's their head of cannabis. They have a cannabis team. They're focused solely on Canada because it's a federally legal.
So we're talking about hemp-driven beverages here, right?
No, this is cannabis.
No, I'm talking about hemp-driven beverages.
Most choose not to.
Okay.
So most choose not to because most of those companies you mentioned are publicly traded. They don't want the shareholders to take them down. They don't want the stock exchanges to take them down. The one exception that we're seeing is in Minnesota, where you have craft brewers or local brewers in Minnesota, like Surly Brewing, which if you haven't seen their facility, beautiful, huge. They are now getting into the space and they're leveraging their distribution in Minnesota. So,
Surly Brewing.
Surly Brewing.
I mean, this is great news for the beer companies because even brewery business is obviously struggling.
Yeah.
And Minnesota is a great example. So check out this company, which Ben is saying. If you're a brewer, I think a great way to leverage your facility.
Yeah. And then, there's a patchwork of local distributors in different states like Georgia and what have you that are coming on and starting to distribute hemp beverages. But, it's not like a vertically integrated brand that you would normally, but they might be carrying AB InBev like products on their trucks.
What's your next 12 to 18 month foresight about overall? Like name 5 or 6 SKUs, name 5 or 6 market, and show us a good roadmap which you think we should expect.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm really excited about in the beverage category is segmentation. I had this revelation at your last show where someone was talking about health and wellness products and like kind of the nutraceutical route and GNC, and I'm like, cannabis does have a place there, and beverage does have a place. You have like things like muscle milk and stuff like that, but it's like not every cannabis beverage belongs in that channel. And so what I think we're going to see is just a lot more sophistication and segmentation in the market. And so I earlier talked about Uncle Arnie's and how they built this brand for the heady kind of like legacy consumer, heavy dosing, low price. It's like that's going to speak to one type of the market, and they're going to get more sophisticated in how they access that consumer. And same with products like Happy and Wink and the litany of 5.
So you've seen them segmentizing and then finding their customers and then sticking to the different routes of distribution for that particular segment.
Yeah. Which is challenging, right? Like we have a small market and it's very fragmented, but I do think that it is becoming that, especially in markets like California where you have a large addressable market, you have a lot of brands, and so people are finding that they do need to differentiate. When you're in a protected market like Illinois or Michigan, you can get by with a relatively thin value proposition. But as soon as those markets become more sophisticated, you really have to learn who your customer is and how you're speaking to them.
Cool. One last one, fun one.
Yeah.
If you had a chance to meet the president, what 2 things you would advocate? I mean, in a serious way. Like, what do you think where chances are high? Not like just anything you would ask, right?
Yeah, it's current president. I think it's a pretty high lift just to get him to see the benefit, right? And what I've witnessed in the past with beverage is that it has the greatest chance of getting someone to at least try it. It's like if you take a can, for instance, 2 milligrams of THC, 4 milligrams of CBD, it's like you're not going to get too high off this, but you should try it. And so you at least can be educated about like what you're trying to build regulations around. And I think that's been the hardest thing. It's like we have legislators and lawmakers creating rules without actually knowing the product.
True. Product knowledge is definitely a bottleneck. Like I personally faced it myself. Like I'm not a hardcore user or anything. So that brings me to the same examples, right? Like I mean, if they don't know depth of how the functionality works, it definitely is a challenge.
Given the opportunity, I would just love to be in a room with as many of these politicians as possible. And have like the schedule, like the schedule 1 through 5, the definitions up on the wall, and convince them all to just at least have one beverage and be like, does the result you are feeling align with how you're categorizing an entire industry at this point?
Nice.